Hi, my name is Pop. This video shows how to do a 3-item lookup using a spreadsheet. I am using OpenOffice.org spreadsheet called Calc in Ubuntu, but this will also work using Excel in Windows or a Mac. I have two other videos out that this video refers to. One is called VLOOKUP tutorial, and in that video I show how to do VLOOKUP. That's a vertical lookup function in a spreadsheet. I have another tutorial called payroll, and in that payroll I referred to IRS withholding, and in IRS withholding you've got a weekly figure and whether or not an employee is married or single, and then how many deductions they have, and the function tells you how much to take out. Now, I started at the end of the video down here where we're going to end up, and this looks extremely difficult, but I'm going to work through it and show you everything and how to do this. First, I'm going to zero in on the whole formula itself, and as I say, it seems very, very difficult. There is a VLOOKUP function wrapped up inside of an if function. The if function actually wraps around two alternatives. If married, then do this first VLOOKUP. If not married, then by default go to the other VLOOKUP. I'm going to hit escape and hide the internals, and now go down to the very beginning and work through it. First of all, we've got a column of weekly amounts for a paycheck, and I already labeled this as a single person. Down here I'm going to put another chart for married. Here this single person has got deductions of $39 if he makes $1,000, and $1,750 will cause the government to require $45 to be withheld. It gets more complicated when you've got 0 or 1. Here, if this person makes $1,500 a week and he declares 0 deductions, he will pay $43, but if he has 1 deduction, he will pay $27. I'll add the third column now. So we've got 0 deductions, 1 deduction, 2 deductions. Now please notice a couple of things. These are fictitious figures. These are not correct. I used odd numbers for single, and then down here when I show you the married chart, I'll have fictitiously used 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 even numbers. Another thing to notice is this first column in this rectangular chart is how much the person makes. The rest of the chart is how much to take out. But how much is made is always in the first column, and this is labeled column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. Now please notice that the column headers up here, 0 deductions, 1 deduction, 2 deduction, is not the same thing as column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. So if I want to get column 4, in this case, I would add 2 and 2. If I want to get column 3, I would add 1 and 2. If I want to get column 2, I would add 0 and 2. In other words, just add 2 to what's up here at the top. Now, here are our answers and our questions. I've got $1,000 a week, and I've got one deduction. How much do we give to the IRS? Well, I go to column 1 and find $1,000 a week. There it is. It's on this row. An important point. I'm looking in the first column, column D here, and when I find the figure, I then go along that row. I search in column 1 to find the correct row. Then somewhere on this row will be our answer. Our answer will be where this row intersects with the number of deductions, and that's column 2. So column 2, the answer would be 23. If you make $1,000 a week, one deduction, you would take off $23 and send it to the IRS. Oh, let's put in another one. $750 and 2. Go to column 1, find the row with $750 on it, go along that row until you find the number of deductions, and it's 5. Now, in this screen, I have gone ahead and put in the actual interactive lookup function. And whatever I put in dollar amount here and deductions here, the answer will automatically show up. I'm going to now go through the VLOOKUP function and in detail show you what's going on. First of all, you start off with an equal sign, and that tells the computer you are not merely just putting in text or numbers, but rather you are putting in a formula, and this formula is going to be used by the computer to compute something. It starts with an equal sign, and then you type in the word VLOOKUP. Notice please this is in uppercase, but I am going to now put it in lowercase and show you what happens. It's in lowercase. I hit enter. Let me go back to it. Look, the computer changed my lowercase back into uppercase. So, in other words, you can put it in uppercase or lowercase, and it will transform it to uppercase. Equal VLOOKUP, no spaces. Open parentheses, 4 items separated by commas, closed parentheses. The 4 items separated by commas here are 1, 2, 3, and then the last item. The first item is going to be the first column. If you look over at B2, it says 1500. That refers to the first item of this rectangular grid. The first item in the VLOOKUP is the first column in your rectangular grid. The second item in a VLOOKUP is the rectangular grid itself. The rectangular grid is D2 colon G10. Here's D2. I'm going to put my left thumb on the left control key and then tap. I'm going to go down here to G10 and tap. There are 2 cells, D2 and G10, and those are the two cells that define this rectangular grid. D2 through G10. Now remember, in order to demonstrate that, I told you I went to D2 and I held down to the control key and then tapped. Well, if I hold down the shift key, oops, I did it wrong, the shift key and tap, and then go here and hold down the shift key, then tap, now you see the whole grid, and that is the grid. B2 is the first column of the grid, comma. D2 through G10 is the grid, comma. The third item in the VLOOKUP will be B3. However, B3 says 1, and I want to find actually the third column, so I'm adding 2 to it. B3 plus 2 will give me 1. Had I been wanting a 0 over here, I still would have said B3, which is 0, plus 2, and that would have given me the second column. Had I wanted 2 deductions, I would have put in a 2 here. But the 2 is on the fourth column, so I would have said B3 plus 2. I always say B3 plus 2. The fourth item in here is sort order. I will show you that in just a minute, but right now I'm not going to show that to you. Let's instead change this to 250, and let's change this to 0 deductions, and it says 33. Let's see if it's right. Well, I go to the first column of the grid and I find 250. Then I take B3 plus 2, and there I am, 33. I'll just put in one more. $17.50, and 2 and 2 is 4, and there we are. Now remember, I told you I was going to leave this till later. I'm going to do that now. Let's say, for instance, I am looking for wages of $251. Oops, NA. The reason I get an NA is because there is no 251 in this first column. The 0 here tells you to look specifically and only for exact matches. But if I change that to a 1, now it looks for between the lines. So 251 is between 250 and 500. It's not yet 500. So it's not going to say 3. It's going to say 1. Let's say I put 2001. Same thing. It's greater than 2000, but it's still 15. Another one, let's say 1100. 1100 is between 1000 and 1250, but it's not yet up to 1250, so it's still 7. Now, what about if I go, I don't know, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, let's go 100,000, or just a bunch of zeros. It still says 15. Apparently there is no upper limit. It'll just pick the last thing in your list and that's your answer. What about a lower limit? I'm going to trick you. I already know the answer. Oops. I'm going to put in 249. NA. It's not within the range. Now remember, I already put in the 1. That's not our problem. It is looking between the lines. But it's going between 250 and 500. And we're looking at a number that's under 250. So I'm just going to give you a piece of information. You always have to start with a 0. When you're doing something like this, you must start with a number at your lower range. Your lower range in this case, I'm going to say, is 0. 0 to infinity. I got everything covered. But now it's 249, and the answer is 1. I got rid of 250. I'll go back over this a little bit. If I change this number to 0, it only gets exact matches. So I don't want to do that usually. In some instances you may want to do that. But I didn't, so I want a fluid range, so I put in a 1. Having the 1 in there allows me to go from whatever my lower range is to infinity. But it will not get below the lower range. So I put in 0 for the lower range. Next topic. We're going to start our married chart. Same thing, same numbers. I went ahead and put in the 0 here. And now we're going to put in all of our deductions. And as promised, these are all going to be even numbers, just because I wanted to make it look different. Now I need some method to figure out how in the heck am I going to do that? I've got a VLOOKUP here, and it looks in this top chart. But there's no method to look in the bottom chart. I can have married or single and put in married, and there's no way for me to look in this bottom chart because the VLOOKUP function is saying to look in the top chart. But here's the thing I can do. I'm going to copy, Control C now, and I'm going to put it down here and hit Control V as in Victor for paste. And now look what I've got. I just copied everything, but look, it also copied the function, and it kept track of all the cell addresses and changed them as needed. The first column says to look in B13 right here, and the grid says to look in this bottom grid. Let me just quickly hit F2 and it outlines the grid. Escape, I'll go back up here, F2. See, they're completely comparable, but they each refer to a different location. Now, I could use this, I suppose. I would look up in the top grid and use that one when I had single, and I would use the bottom grid when I had married. But this line right here, this row M or S is M, and this line right here, M or S equals S, it really doesn't do anything yet. What I need to do is refer to each chart with an if function. I need to say, if this line says S, then refer to the top chart. However, if this line says M, then refer to the bottom chart. And I can do that using an if function, and I will begin showing that to you now. I will now review the if function. In A1 I've got 1. And I see that in B1 it says 1, 1, 1. There is where my formula is. Let me tap it. And this is an if function which says equal if, no spaces, parentheses with 3 items in it, 1, 2, 3, close parentheses. And that's in spreadsheet syntax, but in English syntax this would read, if A1 is 1, then put in 1, 1, 1. Otherwise, put in 2, 2, 2. So let's put something else over here besides 1, anything, a W. Sure enough, 2, 2, 2. In one instance, and one instance alone, if I put in a 1 in A1, will B1 read 1, 1, 1. In all other instances, it will read 2, 2, 2. Nothing else will ever show up in B1 because of the way this is written. It's written as a fork in the road. It's an alternative. If A1 is 1, go to this fork in the road and put in 1, 1, 1. Otherwise, go to the other fork in the road and put in 2, 2, 2. Now, let's change this from 1s and 1, 1, 1s and 2, 2, 2s into marrieds and singles. I put in married, M for married here, and it says something screwed up. What happened? If A1 is M, then put in married. Otherwise, put in single. And I have single quotation marks around everything. And it says it doesn't like that syntax. It's very fussy. You have to put in the right punctuation and grammar and stuff. The spreadsheet is unforgiving. Let me go back to this. Look here, I had nothing around here. The 1, 1, 1 and the 2, 2, 2 and the 1. So perhaps that's it. Let me edit this. I'm going to get rid of the single quotes. And I will remove all of them. And I'm going to make a point. Bear in mind, not every spreadsheet has this same syntax. It's still wrong. Didn't I remove that single quote around the M? Apparently it likes to put in the single quote. I've removed all of the single quotes, correct? Look, it put back the single quote. All right, let's try a double quote. Save yourself some time and remember this. I've got double quotes there. Now, that's my point. Remember, please, to put in double quotes on everything. When you're dealing with numbers, you don't have to. When you're dealing with text, you have to. Okay, I put in an M, and it says it'll yield married. If A1 is M, then married, otherwise single. Anything else I put in here, S, it's going to say single. What about D for divorced? It still says single. What if I did want D for divorced? Well, you can wrap one F function around another, or another way of saying it is you can nest them like those Russian Easter eggs. I've got to go if A1 equals M, then married. Otherwise, now start over. If A1 equals S, then single. Otherwise, divorced. Please notice on the end that there are two closed parentheses. They balance. I've got two closed, one open, one open. There's four of them altogether. There will always be an even number. This is the outside if function, and where the otherwise begins is the beginning of the interior if function, which is self-contained. If A1 is S, single, otherwise divorced. Let's try it. D. Okay, so I've got M for married, S for single, D divorced. What about X? Still divorced. That's because this divorced arises not from the D, but anything other than M for married, S for single. If it were blank, it's still divorced. Well, that's how you nest an if function. Let's go back now and see what we can do in order to create a nested if function. To review, we've got a self-contained VLOOKUP here and a self-contained VLOOKUP here. Now I'm going to do it. Bear with me. Equal if, open parentheses, B4 equal S, comma. If B4 equals S, I want to go up here. VLOOKUP, open parentheses, we're going to go look up in the first column B2 comma. Now we're going to refer to the entire grid, D2, colon, G10, comma, B3 plus 2, sort order is 1, close parentheses, comma. Now we're going to do the same thing, but it's the bottom grid. VLOOKUP, open parentheses, B2, comma. The bottom grid is D13, colon, G21, comma, B3 plus 2, comma, 1, close, close, enter. And I got it wrong. What did I do wrong? I forgot something. Easy enough to do, I suppose. I forgot the double quotes. And I told you not to forget the double quotes. Let's test this out to see if it works. We've got M, so we're going to look in the bottom one. And we're looking for 700. That's going to be on this row between 500 and 750. And we're going to look for 1, and it's 20. I'll buy that. Let's try S2, 2, and let's say 1251. Make it complicated. It's S, so it's up here. It's 1251, but not yet 1500, so it's on this row. And it's 2. It's going to be 9. Okay. Now when I hit F2, look, it grabs both of the grids, and it's very colorful. I'll enlarge it a little bit. I'm having a mess here. If B4 is double quote S, then go look in the S lookup, which is the grid D2G10. Otherwise, do your looking up in the other grid, which is D13G21. I'd like to show you one other item before we quit. I have got these grids named by just defining them with their cell locations, D2 through G10. However, if I outline that grid, I can go over to this box and rename it as S. I can go to this bottom grid and rename it as M. In this manner, it's possible to write your functions more simply by, instead of referring to them as D2G10, I could just call this S. But look what happened. I put a double quote around it and it wouldn't accept it. So how about I remove the double quote? Now it accepts it. Isn't that funny about the syntax of the double quote business? I find that very peculiar, that it's not consistent. Perhaps there is a good reason for it, and it's quite obvious, and I just haven't noticed it yet. I changed the S here, and when I did, when I hit S2, now the upper grid is not outlined. It is referred to right here in the formula with an S. Now the bottom grid is still outlined, and it's D13 through G21. If I now start calling that M for married, the formula still works, but I don't get my outline anymore. I don't think that makes any difference, but it does make a shorter formula, and it is good to name things rather than just refer to them by their two corners. Well, I have finished. I have shown everything that I know about this, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I have several other tutorial videos on YouTube. My name is Pop. I thank you very much.